I have a delightful surprise, something I've been so excited to show. I gasped. I had to pause the audiobook. That was so out of pocket. One, Nova Albright has been found murdered. Nova must have been pregnant and looking for an abortion before she died. So he is cleared for this murder. So they find out that this storeroom was where Nova was originally murdered. They turn on Nova's phone and they scroll back to messages from someone titled Bay. They call the number, and who picks up? Jackson Pafford. I know you weren't expecting this. You're like, who was this dude? Who's Chad? Who's Evan? Now he's Jackson Pafford. Okay, so Jackson Pafford is mentioned very briefly at the start of the story. He was there when they were having their initial kerfuffle. They figure out that Jackson was the person that Nova was seeing. Jackson is also the person that got Nova pregnant. Okay, so we are now on October 20th, 7:05 a.m. We're in Tinsley's point of view. They decide that they're going to confront Jackson to make him confess to killing Nova, because now he has a motive. Tinsley decides that she is going to go confront Jackson by herself because Duchess is late. They agreed to meet up. She is not there. Tinsley decides that she's going to get to the bottom of it by herself. Nobody knows that they're in a relationship, and this is partly because during a certain movement that happened in 2020, or that really kicked up in 2020, it was revealed that this man's parents belonged to a club of white bed sheets. So looping back a little bit, the picture that Tinsley took in the police station of their little murder board, she sees a note right in the center that says, "Don't do it or I'll make you regret it." So she believes that Jackson did not want Nova to have the baby. He wanted her to have an abortion. She refused to do it, and that was why he killed her. Okay, so Tinsley is confronting him about the notes, about the relationship, about the baby, about everything. She's got receipts, proof, timeline, fucking everything she's throwing at him, right? But they're interrupted as the principal announces that classes are canceled for the day and possibly for tomorrow. And she calls Tinsley MacArthur to the principal's office. While at the principal's office, she is met by Chief Barrows, Captain Simmons, and Duchess. So the police chief confronts Tinsley and asks for Nova's phone. Duchess has told the police everything. She told them about the crime scene, about the phone, about literally everything Tinsley has ever told her. Tinsley is incredibly mad. Duchess has ratted her out to the police in a shocking turn of events. Tinsley ends up going home. Her dreams of being Nancy Drew are squashed. She goes home and receives another threat. Someone sends a picture of her driving home from school that day and says, "Watch your back." Okay, so this is the same day Duchess is at a diner. I forgot what they call it, Jitterbugs. Yeah, Jitterbugs. She is at this diner where her girlfriend Evelyn works. Evelyn is in college. Duchess is in high school. I will let that speak for what it speaks for. So Evelyn and Duchess are kind of fighting. Evelyn is berating Duchess for her choices to team up with Tinsley, and this is because Evelyn is incredibly dead set that Tinsley is the murder victim. She does not trust Duchess's little intuition, and she says that, she's not making smart decisions. Evelyn was actually the person that ratted out Duchess and Tinsley's little plan to the captain. Ev knew that Duchess and Tinsley were teaming up together, and she was very upset about it. To kind of quell her suspicions, Duchess tells her that they found Nova's phone and the crime scene. Evelyn immediately takes this information to the captain. Duchess is incredibly upset about it, understandably so. Even though she is upset at Evelyn, she's like, whatever, I don't care about crossing over Tinsley. So they're getting into a little fight that is quickly interrupted by Tinsley, who goes to meet up with Duchess at this diner and kind of confronts her about hey, you really screwed me over. Why would you do that? And they essentially have a fight where Duchess says that anything that she does to Tinsley is deserved because she is racist. And at the end of the day, even if she didn't kill Nova, she still said the things that she said in that video. So she is not innocent. She screwed over people all the time. She is not someone that is above doing what Duchess did to her. So they get into a little fight. I'm really glossing over it just because they throw out a whole bunch of buzzwords. It's not. She essentially calls her racist. She's like, I'm not racist, and then she cries about it, and then whatever, I don't care. While they're at the diner, they notice that Jackson Pafford is pulling up to the diner with his friends. They go outside to confront him. Jackson was questioned by police after this encounter, and he tells them exactly what he told the police, which is that yes, he and Nova were in a relationship. Nova told him that she was pregnant, and they initially both agreed that she would get an abortion because they were kids, they don't have any money, they want to go to college, and they just couldn't afford it. But Nova changed her mind, and this is because Donna Albright told Nova, her daughter, that she was planning to abort Nova, but decided not to, and that really messed her up mentally. Okay, let's put another one up. Why don't we do that? Telling your kid that you wanted to abort them is usually not a very good thing to say. So they were arguing. There's also evidence because Evelyn said that she saw Jackson and Nova in jitterbugs in the few days leading up to her death, and he said that she was going to ruin his life and he was not going to let her, solidifying for them that he was the one that probably killed her, but he denies that he did. Leading up to her death, Nova says that if she can find a way to make sure that they have money and they won't have to worry about school or any kind of expenses, then they could have the baby. And he's like, I don't know. Okay. There's an implication that Nova is trying to scheme for a way to make sure that she can have the baby and be financially supported for it, right? Cool. Okay. Jackson texts her that night at the coronation, the text that initially distracted Nova, which is to meet her in the storage room. Nova theoretically goes to the storage room to meet Jackson, but Jackson doesn't end up going. Jackson was avoiding her and he actually decided not to meet up with her in the shed. He instead goes to break into another school, Capitol Heights, about 45 minutes away from the crime scene, and he was not there. This story is also corroborated by the Capitol Heights Police Department, since the school called the police to report the break-in. So that night, Jackson was nowhere near the school, and he ends up spending the night with a friend, which is all corroborated. So Jackson is cleared. So during this encounter, Tinsley is kind of leading the questioning, and because she recognizes that Jackson is crying, he was probably very in love with Nova. Meanwhile, Duchess is in a lot of denial because Nova did not tell her that she was dating Jackson. And Jackson says that the reason that she didn't tell her was because she hates white people. Like, that's literally the reason too. Because, so earlier that day, when Nova is announced as the homecoming queen, she asks Duchess if she would ever date a white person. And Duchess says, absolutely not. So Nova was trying to like test the waters to see if she would be okay with, you know, Nova dating a white person. And obviously she was not. So she kind of failed that test. So that's why Nova didn't want to tell her about Jackson, because even though they were in love, she knew that Duchess would not approve. Jackson ends up going into jitterbugs. Ev comes out and invites Tinsley out with Duchess. They're going to a club of sorts. That night, they go to a slam poetry reading of sorts, like a cafe, bar, club, nightclub thing. Okay. While they're there, they meet a gaggle of characters that really aren't important except for Brianna. Brianna is reading some poetry. So that the only thing you need to know about that encounter is it's Evelyn, Brianna, Chance, Nikki. Trenton is also there, but he's not like involved in this like conversation. They're all shitting on Tinsley. The whole chapter is them being like, you're racist, and she's like, no, I'm not, and they just go back and forth about it. Okay. Tinsley gets upset that Duchess is not defending her. Duchess gets mad at Evelyn because Evelyn only invited Tinsley so that they can all like shit on her. So Evelyn knowingly instigates a fight between Tinsley and Duchess to make a point that Tinsley is a bad person, which is a red flag. You should never want to make someone intentionally angry or upset in a relationship, especially when that person is in high school and less developed than you are. Tinsley storms out of the club. She is also like approached by 3 different girls that try to essentially jump her, but Trenton ends up coming back and saving the day. He offers to drive Tinsley home. While they're on this car ride home, it is revealed. So Trenton and Tinsley actually have like a history because Trenton's father used to work with Virgil MacArthur, aka Tinsley's father. Trenton's father went off and made his own company, and Virgil promised that he was going to help him with contracts and, you know, kind of get like started, right? Virgil, surprise, surprise, did not hold up his end of the bargain. Tinsley did not know this part. She only knew that they were like not friends. They were kind of rivals, but she didn't really understand why. Trenton tells her the whole thing. So they kind of have like a heart to heart where she's like, I'm sorry, I had no idea. My dad's, I guess, like a bad person. I'm really sorry. That shouldn't have happened to you. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, I guess you MacArthur people are not all that bad. You seem to have some kind of moral compass. So Trenton over here, while they're talking, right, Tinsley brings up the fact that Trenton used to have a crush on Nova. Those feelings were not reciprocated. He says that it's because people like Nova and Tinsley don't go for the nerdy types like him until he makes 7 figures. He hits us with this stupid nice guys finish last bullshit. So he gets a red flag. He gets a red flag. That's like so stupid to say. This is Tinsley saying it from the perspective of a male author. So these are his words going through Tinsley's mouth. She says, he's not that bad looking. He just needs to like dress up, do some like skincare, and you know, he's like good looking. Not even the fact that he's just like a generally nice dude. The author is essentially saying, without saying it because he's using Tinsley to say it for him, that girls like her, these like pretty popular girls, still will only care about physical appearances instead of like the actual personality. But even then, I guess Trenton's personality isn't that great if he thinks the nice guys finish last for any other reason than the fact that maybe it's something with his personality. Oh my god. I can't talk about the nice guy trope right now. Anyway, so while they're talking in his car, she sees a car pull into the Jitterbugs parking lot. It is completely empty except for these two cars. She sees two people come out of these cars, and who is it? I guess it's not really important. She sees Rachel's husband come out, and he is kissing some girl that is not Rachel. She takes pictures to show Rachel later. We're now on October 21st, 10:07 a.m. We're in Duchess's point of view. Duchess is really upset with Evelyn, but, and I hate this characteristic, she and Evelyn have not talked about the incident since it happened. Evelyn, Brianna, and those other people that I didn't mention end up going to Duchess's house because they're going to go to a protest for the freeing of Curtis Delmont. Again, that other like side story that is going on in this story. So they are going to go to a protest. Evelyn and Duchess are seemingly on good terms. They're like kissing, loving dovey, whatever, all that good stuff. Again, they just had a fight because she instigated a fight between her and Tinsley for the only purpose of trying to prove a point, which is awful. That's a bad thing to do. So while they're talking, Duchess notices a protest sign in the passenger seat, which says that if they are going to lock up Curtis Delmont, then they should arrest Tinsley MacArthur. Duchess gets very upset because she has an intuition that Tinsley is innocent. No one is believing her intuition. No one's trusting her judgment. She feels very alienated by her friends, and she's like, my gut never lies. So she gets into a fight with Brianna. They are like arguing with each other. Evelyn ends up apologizing to Duchess, and they make up. I think it's a little quick, but whatever. Duchess ends up going to a cafe as classes are canceled for the day. She's trying to write the speech for that pep rally, and she runs into Mr. Haywood, pictured below as Psychowitz. They're talking for a little bit. Mr. Haywood specifically mentions that they searched Nova's locker. He mentions the note specifically. Duchess at this point does not know about this note. She knows that Tinsley took a picture of the murder board and that she was focusing on something in it, and she also referenced the note, although she doesn't know what it says, and now Mr. Haywood knows about this note. Up till now, the only other person was Tinsley, and that's because she took a picture. She has no idea how Mr. Haywood knows about this note. He's asking her questions about like if the police know who wrote it. So he's asking her a lot of weird questions about this note, and it's like really throwing her off. She's like, something is not adding up here. So now we are in Tinsley's point of view. She confronts her sister Rachel about her husband cheating on her. Rachel says she knows. They kind of have like a cute little heart-to-heart where she's like, you deserve better than that. And she's like, I'm rich, so I just have to kind of like accept that my husband cheats on me, but whatever. Okay, so that's like a minor thing. We're gonna skip a little bit past that. So earlier in the day, the cheerleading coach drops off some forms for Tinsley because they're doing like fundraisers. Tinsley is looking through the list because she's still the captain, so she still has to do like captain stuff. So she's looking through the list of suggestions, and they're all handwritten, and she recognizes the handwriting on one of the like entries, and it matches the handwriting on that note she saw on the murder board. The handwriting matches that of one Jessica Family. Now, Jessica is mentioned only one other time in chapter 4, so 20 chapters later she comes back. So now Tinsley is like, why did Jessica write that letter to Nova? Like, what is their connection here? Let me tell you. So Tinsley ends up going to cheerleading practice to observe the ladies as they're preparing for the pep rally. So she kind of like plants a seed of like suspicion because she mentions that the police found that note in Nova's locker and they already know who wrote it. Jessica knows that she wrote it. Again, Tinsley is lying. She's just trying to get a reaction from Jessica. Jessica leaves the cheerleading practice extremely early, and Tinsley decides to follow her. Up until this point, Tinsley has had a kind of like shadow. There's like a police unit assigned to her, like they track her or whatever. So she can't really get a lot of detective work done if there's someone following her. So she manages to lose her police detail by having her sister Rachel drive to the cheerleading practice. They switch cars. It's like some Nancy Drew shit, really. So Tinsley ends up following Jessica to a neighborhood that is not hers. She's very confused on where she is. While she's trying to follow Jessica, who interrupts this investigation? Fucking Duchess. Duchess is like, where are you going? And Tinsley's like, I'm doing something important. Like, let's go. And Duchess is like, no, you have to tell me right now. Otherwise, I will call my dad. And she's like, oh my God, can this fucking wait? And that's what I'm saying too. Can this fucking wait? This whole time, Duchess keeps saying, like, you know, justice for Nova. We have to figure out who killed Nova. But then anytime Tinsley tries to figure out who did it, who gets in the fucking way? Duchess! Every single time. The only person, and I understand it's like a trope. It's a trope of like mysteries. And I get it that like miscommunication is always like the plot driving device thing, but it's so annoying. So Tinsley explains, the note, Jessica, let's go. She's like, okay. So they follow Jessica. She goes into someone's house. So they're hearing some people arguing on the inside. They jump into the backyard of this person's house. They look in the sliding glass door and they see Jessica and Mr. Haywood in this house together. And not only are they in this house together, they kiss.
That little girl is a child. I don't want to see you sniffing around her anymore this afternoon. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
This motherfucker, this ugly ass motherfucker. Anyway, Tinsley and Duchess decide that they're gonna confront Jessica. So Jessica leaves Mr. Haywood's house. They go up to confront her. So they're questioning her about why Jessica wrote this note. And Jessica explained that Nova caught Jessica and Mr. Haywood, aka Aaron, catch them in our classroom before school. She sees them kiss, and Nova ends up cornering Jessica one day in the bathroom. Nova tells her that they cannot continue their relationship, otherwise Nova will have to go to the school officials to let them know. Jessica is incredibly distraught because she thinks she's in love with this teacher. So now this is really what made me want to like put down the book. This is what really for me made me feel like this character is irredeemable. I already wasn't really like on board with how this character was written, but this just really like ended it. It was like the final straw for me. So Duchess and Tinsley are confronting Jessica. They now think that Jessica murdered Nova because she knew about their relationship, right? So they're suspecting her of murder. The reason that Nova told Jessica that she needed to end her relationship with Mr. Haywood is again because she was abused as a child. So she didn't want Jessica to go through what she went through because this is an abusive relationship. He is taking advantage of her. He groomed her. He is her teacher in a position of power. They should not be in a relationship. It's not consensual on her part. She can't consent. Okay. With all of this in mind, Duchess calls her a thought for being abused by someone in a position of power, despite her best friend also going through an abuse. That's disgusting. It's never corrected. Like, you can write characters saying bad stuff as long as there are consequences for a character that does and says bad things. There's been consequences for Tinsley, quote unquote, if you will. Duchess knowingly calls this girl a thought for being abused by an older man, despite her best friend going through the same thing. And she shows no remorse for saying so and even acknowledges that that's probably why Nova wanted them to stop their relationship. And she says these kinds of relationships can't be consensual. So she is acknowledging the abuse that is going on and still calls her that. That's awful. That's despicable. She deserves a red flag. That really made me so genuinely angry because at the end of the day, this is a character, right? And I can understand that. Somebody wrote her saying that. This is somebody's words. And whether or not he agrees with that, I can't say, and I won't make that assumption, but he never corrected her behavior or punished her for saying that. Never in the book. So think what you will. I really got heated there for a second. Okay. I feel like I'm turning red. Yes, Jessica slipped that note into Nova's locker, saying, trying to threaten her not to tell on her and Mr. Haywood, otherwise she would make her regret it. She says it's an empty threat. She didn't really have any intention of like doing anything to Nova or like anything of that nature. Jessica's alibi for that night is that she left the dance early. Well, I guess it's not a dance. She left the coronation early with Mr. Haywood. They went to a motel on the other side of town. They spent the night together. Duchess ends up calling the motel to verify. So they have an alibi and therefore they are cleared. Two pedophiles cannot be cleared on this list. Son of a bitch, man. I'm so angry. The next day, Tinsley and Rachel end up going to the country club because Rachel is going to meet with a divorce lawyer to explore her options. While they're there, the only really thing that is important, Tinsley notices that there is a note on the hostess stand of this restaurant that says that breakfast services are closed. And she like makes a note of it, but she can't really like explain why she's paying attention to that. And even I was like, okay, this feels like really stupid to pay attention to, but whatever. While they are there, Tinsley sends the divorce lawyer the pictures of Rachel's husband kissing that girl. While she's looking through the pictures, she finally decides to look at the entire picture that she took of the murder board at the police station because she was only focusing on the note. She didn't even look at everything else in the picture. When she looks at what is also in this picture, she sees a list of the people that the principal verified stayed after the coronation to clean up. And on that list is Trenton. But Trenton told Tinsley and Duchess that he ended up leaving early and didn't make sure that Nova got home. He felt really bad about it, but he said that he did not stay. But he is on the list of people that stayed after the cleanup. There is a discrepancy here. So now we're on October 22nd. Tinsley decides that she is going to go to Trenton's house to try and figure out why it was that he lied. So while she's in there, they kind of have like a weird romantic tension. He has like a crush on her now because she gave him the time of day. So he brings her up to his room. They're kind of like talking, making small talk. He ends up leaving to go get her a drink, and she decides that she's gonna snoop around to see if she can find some evidence. She looks in his closet, finds the suit that he was wearing the night of the coronation, and sees that it's clean. There's no evidence, there's no blood, no nothing. So she's like, okay, cool. But when she looks under the soles of his shoes to see if they're muddy or bloody or anything like that, something falls out from inside the shoe. And what is it? Her necklace. Oh my God. Trenton has the diamond pendant that Nova was wearing the night she was murdered. Trenton walks in on Tinsley finding this necklace, and he tries to explain the situation to her. He's like, okay, relax, it's okay. Let me explain. Oh, I didn't mean to zoom in. He's like, okay, let me explain. She is freaking out. He has evidence. She thinks he murdered Nova. She ends up running away from him. He tries to kind of like grab her and keep her there. She scratches the hell out of him, ends up running out to her little police escort, and tells them that Trenton murdered Nova. We are in Duchess's point of view now. So Duchess and Tinsley are at the police station. Tinsley is being questioned, and they're both kind of like doubting that Trenton actually killed Nova. They think he's involved in some way, or that there's some explanation as to why he has the necklace, but they don't think that he was the one that killed Nova. Even Captain Simmons expresses that he doesn't think he did it because he was like, oh, I know this kid. And that's why I'm like, another reason that he should not be working this case, because he like knows intimately a lot of the people. So of course he wasn't even looking at Trenton because he knows him. And he's like, oh, he wouldn't do that. So he's biased. Anyway, Trenton admits that he found Nova in the storeroom after she was murdered. He was in the middle of calling 911. He saw the video of Tinsley making her rant on TikTok and was so angry that he decided he was going to frame her for murder.
In fact, we're gonna frame you for murder. And you're gonna go to jail for 30 years.
He decided that he was tired of the MacArthurs getting away with stuff, specifically because, and he mentions this earlier when he's talking to Tinsley, that Virgil MacArthur, he has a construction company. This wasn't something that was passed down to him. He like built it from the ground up. The only reason he is successful is because he gets a lot of government contracts to do some like building, right? But he has reason to believe that because he is friends with the mayor, that he's illegally acquiring all these government contracts and thus stealing them from his father. Trenton is tired of the MacArthurs getting away with crime after crime, so he decides that he's going to frame Tinsley. Trenton admits that he was the one that moved Nova's body to the cemetery to further implicate Tinsley. He took her necklace because he was going to plant it for the police later on to find, but after he talked to Tinsley and saw that she was like kind of chill, I guess, he decides that he was not going to go through with the plan anymore. But through all this, after he is admitting to all of this, he's still adamant that he did not kill Nova. They all end up leaving the police station, right? But Duchess tries to make some commentary about like, oh, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would Trenton do all this stuff? And then she says like, oh, well, it doesn't have to make sense if they're trying to arrest a black man, which I'm like not disagreeing with her. Of course, I understand like the nuances and like, you know, police brutality, wrongful arrest. I completely understand that. But Trenton actually committed a crime. Like, we're not going to skate past that. He tampered with evidence, obstructed justice. I'm pretty sure there's like laws against, I guess you could argue he like defiled her body. body, right? He moved her body. Those are all still crimes. So I don't like, sure, yeah, he didn't kill Nova, because those are all still crimes that he committed and admitted to doing, right? So it's not like they just plucked him off the street and they're like, you're guilty. He admitted to doing all of this stuff. But I understand. I think it was just like bad commentary in the wrong spot. As Tinsley is leaving the police station, she hears her parents kind of having a little argument where Virgil says that, alluding to Trenton, that he shouldn't have to go down for this. And Charlotte's mother is just like, it's done. It's fine. Relax. So she thinks it's very weird, right? And this specific encounter raises some red flags for Tinsley, specifically because she remembers that the morning that she was taken to police for questioning, her parents were supposedly getting back from breakfast at the country club. If you'll remember, the country club stopped serving breakfast briefly before Nova was murdered. So they couldn't possibly have been going to get breakfast because it wasn't being served at that time. I know, such like a random like mini detail to like really implicate them, but I mean, so now armed with this evidence, Tinsley decides that she is going to look in the display case where her mother keeps the scepters and crowns of all the homecoming queens in their family, specifically because Tinsley remembers that when Duchess was at their house and she was talking to her, there's some cleaning ladies that go up to this display case, and Charlotte is like, oh, get away. She tells the cleaning ladies not to go anywhere near it, and Tinsley thought it was weird initially. First, she was like, oh, I have to tell my mom not to be racist, but then she was like, wait, why didn't you just fire them? Like, because Tinsley's mother said that she thought some people were stealing. Tinsley remembers that the last time she accused someone of stealing, she just straight up fired them. So she was like, if she thought they were stealing, why would she just tell them not to go near the display case? She thinks there's something in it. And lo and behold, something is. When she goes to pick up the scepter, her mother's scepter, she notices that the engraving reads Nova Albright. Oh my God. Tinsley goes to confront her mother. She has the scepter in her hand and she asks her mother, where is the scepter? She says, oh, it got mixed up, like we were taking pictures. I guess Nova took mine or whatever. Nova is dead. Lo and behold, this is the ultimate reveal. Virgil MacArthur tells Tinsley that Nova is actually his daughter. I know that's not where we thought this was going, because the author really likes to throw in some like inappropriate relationships between adults and children. So we really thought that it was going to be like, yeah, right? No, he's actually her father. Virgil did not know about Nova's existence until they moved back into town. Charlotte made so that Donna and Nova would not be a part of his life, and she made them sign that NDA that he was holding, that they would not disclose to him about their existence, right? Right. So Virgil, feeling somewhat guilty about having a child he had not cared for the past like 17 years, decides that he's going to give Nova gifts. So it's actually revealed slightly before Tinsley makes this like confrontation, right? Duchess is talking with her father, the captain, because she's like, oh wait, why haven't we looked into where Nova's necklace was bought, right? So Captain Simmons is like, oh yeah, let me do some important police investigations with my daughter after I've already come to the conclusion that she's super like not doing okay and I probably shouldn't be doing serious police investigating with a child, right? Right. He's like, yeah, this is totally appropriate thing to do. So he calls the jeweler, and the jeweler gives him the information, the name of the person that bought this necklace, and that person is none other than Virgil MacArthur. I keep wanting to say Virgil Abloh. Like, the author gives you like a minute where you think like, oh, maybe they were involved in like some kind of relationship. They're not. That's it. That's her father. Okay. As we know, Nova was pregnant. She wanted to keep the baby, but Jackson didn't, because they didn't have any money and they couldn't financially support a baby, and they wanted to go to school. They had their whole lives ahead of them, right? Nova, after getting a gift from her father and knowing that he has some guilt about not being in her life, decides that she is going to threaten Virgil. She says that she will tell the entire town that he is her father if he doesn't give her money and support her and her baby. This did not make Charlotte MacArthur very happy, because even though she knew that her husband had been cheating on her, again, it's like a rich people thing, whatever, she is specifically angry because she was like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but I am the only mother of your children. You are not to have any children with anyone else. He broke this rule and had Nova. Charlotte gets incredibly angry that Nova is trying to extort Virgil. So she follows Nova into the storeroom and kills her. Thus, we have our murderer, Charlotte MacArthur. That morning, when they were supposedly getting breakfast at the country club, Virgil and Charlotte end up going to the golf where they throw the scepter, aka the murder weapon. So that is when they switched out her scepter for Nova's. Up till now, Virgil has been covering up for Charlotte this whole time. So he is also guilty. So Tinsley is the one that broke the case. Cool. So Charlotte is telling Tinsley that she has to take this to the grave. She cannot tell anyone. Trenton has already gone down for it. Everything's fine in her eyes. But Tinsley is not feeling too good about this. So they end up having a little, where is she? They end up having a little kerfuffle. They have a little scuffle where Tinsley is so like mortified by this revelation. She goes to the balcony, throws up. Charlotte follows her and is like shaking her. She's like, you better not tell anyone. And she's like, ah! And they're fighting, right? She ends up pushing Tinsley off the balcony. Oh my God. So Tinsley wakes up in the hospital. She is incredibly injured. She has a broken arm, I think, a concussion. She's not doing great. So Charlotte has told police that Virgil was the one that killed Nova. Charlotte was only like a helpless little victim. She was trying to help her daughter. Virgil was the one that pushed her over the balcony, and they are just innocent victims, right? Right. Charlotte threw him under the bus. Tinsley wakes up and she is only in a room with her mother Charlotte and Duchess. They are both in this room, okay? Okay. Charlotte is desperately trying to get Duchess to leave so she can talk to Tinsley, probably to either force her to not tell anyone or, you know, Duchess refuses to leave. She's looking at Tinsley because Tinsley looks like she's very afraid and she's like, that's kind of weird. I feel like they would have like a tearful embrace after they survived her father, right? But no, she immediately is like, something is off. Duchess tries to get Tinsley to tell her what it is, but Tinsley's like very quiet and she's just like, okay. So Duchess is like, okay, I'm gonna leave. But then Tinsley stops her before she leaves and says, tell your dad to look in our display case and he will find the murder weapon. My mother is the one that did it. Tinsley's mother gets extremely upset. She lunges for Duchess and tries to choke her out, but she is unsuccessful. She is taken. She tried to choke me from the book. Damn. She is taken by security and they are safe. All right, so the rest of the book is where Tinsley goes to visit her father in prison. He kind of fills in any of like the small minor details, small explanations, right? Trenton is now cleared. The end of the story is that they go visit Nova's grave. They're kind of talking about like what their next steps are. Tinsley is now she's an ally, if you will. She's reading, she's learning about not being racist. She's taking those anti-racism classes that Camila Cabello took. I don't know. So they decide, hey, let's just dismantle the system. We're gonna defeat racism at the school, and they're like, yay! And that's the end of the book. Now to get into my criticisms, because I have them. So now for my closing statement. So we have solved the murder of Nova Albright and we have finished the Black Queen. Now I have some comments and criticisms that I want to talk about now. This is like one of the very few mysteries I've read. I don't normally read a lot. The only other one I've read is called One of Us is Lying. So this is a YA thriller and I did check online some like Goodreads reviews. I looked up some like TikTok videos just to make sure that I talk about this in a way, I don't want to talk about this in a way that's like counterproductive. I don't want to like shit on anyone or like make any really hard criticism. So I first and foremost informed myself a little bit. So at first I thought maybe I was alone in some of my criticisms, but I did read on Goodreads and I don't think I was. So let me just go through some of them very quick. First and foremost, one of my biggest criticisms is the use of buzzwords. I feel like this story is obviously very heavy on topics of police brutality, racism, discrimination, and things of that nature. I just felt that sometimes the way that the characters talked about it through dialogue felt a little unnatural. It felt like they were reading from like a TED Talk script. They were using a lot of these like buzz keywords when I feel like they could have let some of the dialogue have those themes and talk about those topics without specifically talking about them, you know? And I hate to compare it because I feel like this book gets brought up a lot, specifically during like Black History Month or anytime there's like a Black author talking about a story. But I will compare it just because the subject matters are very similar. So there's actually a clip from the movie The Hate U Give that I think kind of exemplifies what it is that I'm trying to communicate here. So this clip is essentially where the main character Star is talking to her friend. I forget what her name is, but they're talking about Star's friend, who in that story, he's murdered by police. Sabrina Carpenter's character says that he was a drug dealer. He was probably like a criminal anyway. And they're essentially having a conversation because he was murdered because he was holding a hairbrush and the police officer thought it was a gun. And she says that it looked like a weapon in his hands. Star holds up a hairbrush in hers and she says, "What does it look like in my hand?" And because she's saying that Star is a non-threatening Black girl, right? So in that conversation, without using any buzzwords, they're talking about a variety of different topics, about prejudices, racism, discrimination, unfair treatment, police brutality, all these different very applicable topics to today's world without saying those words. They let the dialogue speak for it and they let the reader make their own conclusions about what it is that they're trying to say. I feel like any time that you're trying as the reader to draw your own conclusions and have your own thoughts, it's like really spoon fed to you. Like you don't even get a chance to really absorb and try and make your own ideas from what you're reading before the author comes through and says that like, oh, this is wrong. This is racism. This is police brutality. This is like, it's very like heavy. And honestly, reading through it felt a little draining just because of how often they talk about it. And they're hammering a lot of these topics at a very surface level. The only time they even like kind of scratch the surface about going deeper is when they're talking about the dichotomy for Duchess about having her father as a police officer living in a world where there is police brutality and racism. She's very aware of how other people think about her and her father, but she doesn't really go into too much about how it affects her and her inner struggles because she is very vocal about like police reform and things of that nature and how she might feel as someone that is on the inside, where she can recognize the good that her father is doing, but simultaneously recognize how the police as a whole are just inherently corrupt. I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunity to go a lot deeper into these topics because, again, there's a lot of stories that cover police brutality and things of this nature, but I'm not seeing necessarily anything new with this book. I also think the use of the side plot with Curtis Delmont is just so that we can compare him and Tinsley, and it's not really used for anything else, which is kind of weird for me. I think another problem in general was like just the dialogue as a whole, which I think was kind of reflected in a lot of the reviews I saw, where again, it's very hard sometimes for writers to write in a perspective that is opposite their own. For example, for me, if I wrote from the perspective of a man, it might be a little bit hard for me because I don't identify as a man, so I don't know a lot of the experiences that are unique to men. And it's the same with adult men writing from the perspective of teenage girls. I also think that the topics of SA, inappropriate relationships, abuse, were not handled with the amount of care that they should have been. I think in this specific story, they were used for mainly shock value. I think that those kinds of plot lines can be handled with a lot more grace, especially considering that it was used so often. It was used with two different characters. And I think they were handled so poorly, especially considering what Duchess says. And she doesn't say it once, she says it twice. It's her and Nova at the beginning of the story that call Jessica they call her a hoe. Then later on, Duchess calls her a thought after she is confirmed to have this relationship with her teacher and even, again, recognizes that this is abuse. I don't think that's okay. I can't imagine how that got past the edit. That's so incredibly tone deaf. It should not have been in that story. There's also some reviews that I saw where people were like, oh yeah, it was super obvious. And it's not always obvious to some people. Some people can be really surprised. And that's me. I'm the person, I never anticipate what twists are coming. Literally never. Pink Diamond, I didn't guess it. In the Trolls movie, the yodeling trolls or whatever, I didn't guess it. I'm oblivious. So I think the overall, like the pacing was really good, I feel. Finding the evidence, obviously, like I made like a whole like board. This was very fun for me to make, very interesting. And I personally like the actual mystery part of it. I think if you just think about it as a mystery, it was fine. It was great, you know? But what really discouraged me, even from finishing the book, was the subject material. And of course, I think the biggest criticism that a lot of people had online was the fact that Tinsley is our main character. This is a dual perspective, but most of the chapters are from Tinsley's POV. They're not from Duchess's. Right away, we know more about Tinsley than we do about Duchess. Honestly, throughout the whole story, the only thing you really know about her is that her mother died when she was young. She's gay and she hates white people. And like, that should be valid. But I could tell you so much about Tinsley and her family tree. I think this is just like a fall on like the structure. The fact that like the character arc that we follow is mainly Tinsley's, and it's just her learning to not be racist. One video, and I will tag it, is that someone said,
I think this book is less about the Black victim and more about a wealthy white girl coming to terms with her privilege and racism. And that, I don't think is a bad story. I don't think that that's not a story worth telling. However, when I pick up a book with a Black girl on the cover and I am reading a book that is titled after the Black Queen, this girl, I'm thinking the story is going to be about her. But really what happens is her death is a catalyst for all of these other things to happen.
That when they pick up a book and there's a Black girl on the cover and the title is The Black Queen, you expect the story to be about her. You expect the story to be about Nova. And if it's not about Nova, because she's the victim, obviously she can't tell her perspective, it should be about Duchess. But it's not about either of them. It's about Tinsley. It's about her learning not to be racist and unlearning a lot of the things that she grew up with, which inherently isn't necessarily a bad story, but it shouldn't have been her story, you know? The Black Queen shouldn't have been about Tinsley. And again, I'm not going to say that this story was necessarily bad. I don't think I had as great of a time reading it as I hoped, but I say all of this as a way to improve, because I don't think that this is like a hopeless story and that there's nothing to learn from it, because of course there is. I actually used to work, well, I didn't work, I was a student editor when I was in college, and one thing that I learned was how to give criticism in a way that is constructive and can help someone learn to thus make a better story in the future. So one thing that can really help is like having sensitivity readers, having someone else look at the story and being open to changing stuff about your book. So I'm hopeful for the other books that will come out from this author. I think this one was a bit of a miss for me, and personally I think I'd rate it like, I'm gonna give it like a 3 out of 5. It, again, wasn't my favorite, but most of my problems were just the subject material. The actual story itself was not bad. I liked the mystery, but I think some of these things could have been handled a lot better. And who knows, if there is a book, a similar mystery in the future from a male perspective, it might be a little bit better. All right, with that being said, this was The Black Queen. I hope you enjoyed it. I worked really hard on this board. I'm very sweaty, very tired. I've been standing for like 3 hours, which is not like that long, but this is kind of long for me. The next book that is coming to this channel is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I love Toni Morrison. I've read some of her other books and I have not read this one, but I'm so very, very excited to bring you that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out the author, because despite my review, I think that next books from him will be great, and I think we should give him a chance. Pick up The Black Queen. Tell me your opinions, your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Disagree? Let me know. And as always, have a happy Black History Month. And don't forget to highlight Black authors and other authors of color outside of their respective history month. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'm tired. That's it. I think I'm gonna go get groceries now.